Today's webinar is the second of 3 webinars that focus on our enhanced EWS High School tool and our new EWS Middle Grades tool. Last week's session, Implementing an Early Warning Intervention and Monitoring System to Keep Students on Track in the Middle Grades and High School, provided an overview of the research on early warning systems and the National High School Center's 7-step implementation process. This webinar has been archived on our website, www.betterhighschools.org. Next week's webinar will focus on the statewide implementation and scale-up of early warning systems and be presented by the Virginia Department of Education and the California Department of Education. We're excited to hear about those challenges and the successes that they have achieved. During today's webinar, we will be providing a brief recap of the research and background of early warning systems that was presented during the previous webinar, followed by a demonstration of the early warning system middle grades tool, a summary of the differences or key features of the high school tool, and then a preview of an exciting new opportunity at the National High School Center, an community of practice for EWS users. Lastly, we will provide a period of time to respond to questions received during the webinar. States, districts, and schools continue to acknowledge the epidemic nature of the dropout problem, with over 25% of students leaving school without a diploma. Meanwhile, schools today are facing financial constraints resulted in decreased availability of services. Many states, districts, and schools are responding to this by using an early warning system to identify youth who are at most risk for dropping out, targeting appropriate services to those students, and then examining school-wide patterns that may be contributing to students' persistence and/or disengagement. The National High School Center's early warning system tools and implementation process are designed to help schools and districts do just this: keep more students in school and engaged in learning rather than dropping out. The Early Warning Intervention and Monitoring System, or EWIMS, is a 7-step process that captures how schools can implement an early warning system tool in a systematic manner. First, schools need to have a set team of diverse members that are aware of not only the student body, but also the interventions that are available within the school. This team then uses an early warning system tool to identify youth that are at risk, take time to understand what the underlying causes are for those students, monitor those students' response to those interventions, and be reflective of this process. What indicators can be used to help this team identify students that are at risk? Research has identified 3 general categories that students can display risk: engagement, course performance, and behavior. Research-based indicators and thresholds for each of these categories can be used in absence of locally validated thresholds. Based on the research, there has been specific indicators and thresholds identified for both the middle grades and high school. First, the purpose of an early warning system is to identify students as early as possible. So many schools have decided to use an incoming indicator based off locally validated risk factors. In addition, the early warning system tool developed by the National High School Center can also provide this incoming indicator based off of an exit indicator at the end of the year. Matt Hanstein will demonstrate this when showing you the middle grades tool. Research has also shown that attendance, course performance, and behavior are all strong predictors of students' eventual graduation and/or dropout. In the middle grades level, missing 20% or more of instructional time, failing English or mathematics are all highly correlated with not graduating. At the high school level, missing 10% or more of instructional time, failure in one or more courses, and this is any course, not core courses or specific courses as in the middle grades, and earning a 2.0 or lower GPA in a 4-point scale are strong predictors. Research continues to agree that behavior is a strong predictor also of graduation, although we acknowledge that many schools and districts not only track, but record this very differently. Therefore, recommend schools use locally validated thresholds for this. And lastly, this end-of-year indicator is a summative indicator of students' risk levels that can inform the subsequent academic year. The early warning systems tools developed by the National High School Center are based on these indicators and thresholds. The early warning system tool can, at both the middle grades and high school level, can be customized and modified to reflect the local school context, provide schools with many reports of those students that are at risk and able to disaggregate this data by different subgroups, and then also monitor students' actual response to intervention. I'm excited to turn the presentation over now to Matt Honstein, who will actually demonstrate the new Early Warning Systems Middle Grades tool.
Great, thank you, Mindy. As Mindy mentioned, my name is Matt Honstein, and I'm going to be giving a detailed walkthrough of how to use our new EWS Middle Grades tool. The first step to obtaining a copy of the Middle Grades tool is to visit our website, betterhighschools.org. Once on our website, select Early Warning Systems from the left-hand navigation menu. Then you'll see our 4 tabs under the Early Warning System page. Select EWS Middle Grades tool to visit the page specific to the Middle Grades tool. Select Download the EWS Middle Grades tool from the center of the page. Once you complete a brief survey, you'll receive your free copy of the EWS Middle Grades tool. The Middle Grades tool can be run on any PC using Excel 2003 and later, as well as Macs using Excel 2004, as well as Excel 2011. The tools cannot be run on Excel 2008 for Macs, as it does not support macros, which are required for the use of the tool. For the purposes of this demonstration, the tool has been preloaded with sample data also available on our website. The first step to using the EWS Middle Grades tool is to enable macros. Once you open the tool, you should see a security warning on the top left. Select Options, then select Enable this content and press OK. This will allow the macros on which the tool is based to function properly. You see now that we are actually inside of and using the Middle Grades tool. This is an Excel-based program, although it does not appear similar to many Excel programs with which you may be familiar. You'll see later on it is built in the same way. It uses hidden calculations as well as cell-based data entry. From the main menu, you can see that the Middle Grades tool is divided into 3 sections. Tool Setup houses information about your school. Data Inputs houses information about your students, and Outputs and Reports combines both sets of information in order to flag students as at risk for the indicators Mindy already discussed. The first section of Tool Setup is School Information. School information is where you input various information about your school or district, as well as uploading a school or district logo. This is also where you identify your early warning system team. This corresponds with step 1 of the EWIMS 7-step implementation cycle, establishing the roles and responsibilities of the EWIMS team. The second page in Tool Setup is the Tool Settings page. Tool Settings is where you enter information regarding grading periods, demographic categories, as well as the risk thresholds for the indicators Mindy discussed. I want to stop here and note that all boxes or cells highlighted in red throughout the tool are required for minimal functionality of the tool. For example, this grading period drop-down highlighted in red. While other cells are not strictly required for the tool to function, they unlock more robust reporting features later in the tool, and as such, the National High School Center strongly recommends users fill in all sections of the tool. As I mentioned, the grading periods drop-down allows users to select the number of grading periods in their school, whether quarters, trimesters, or semesters. Once this has been selected, users must enter the number of days as well as the start and end date for each grading period in use, simply by entering information into the corresponding cell. For example, quarter 4 might end on the 30th. Immediately under the grading period information are demographic categories for disability, race, ethnicity, ELL status, and disadvantaged status. These categories are fully customizable simply by entering information into the cell under the appropriate header. These categories will be used to populate later pages and assign students to various categories. On the top right, the initial attendance time period is the time period in which the tool will measure attendance at the beginning of the year, either 20 or 30 days. Immediately under this drop-down are the risk indicator thresholds. You'll see that the tool comes preloaded with a default thresholds based on the national research. The National High School Center strongly recommends that in lieu of longitudinal school data, users make use of these default thresholds. The exception is the behavior indicator at the bottom, for which you can see the National High School Center has not provided a default threshold. If users wish to use the behavior indicator, they will have to enter in the custom threshold the number of behavior incidences that will serve as the threshold for both the grading period and the year. Immediately under the risk threshold indicator is the cohort variable. This allows users to assign students to a number of groups based on the cohort variable allows users to assign students to up to 10 customizable groups, such as teams, pods, or grade level, by entering the information immediately under the cohort heading. For example, to create Team 4, simply type Team 4. The final section of tool setup is the kindergarten cutoff date. This is the month and day of which is the final day that a student can be enrolled in kindergarten in your district. This date will be used to determine which students are over age later in the tool. The final section of tool setup is the intervention settings page. The intervention settings page catalogs all interventions in use at the school. The tool supports a tiered intervention model, and as such, each intervention is assigned both a type, whether attendance, behavior, or academic, and tier 1, 2, or 3. In order to catalog a new intervention, simply type the intervention name on the far left and assign it a type and a tier. The next section of the tool is the data inputs page. The first section of data inputs is student information. Student information houses demographic, enrollment, and contact information for each student. Note that the categories that were created on the tool settings pages for the 4 demographic categories have populated the drop-down seen on the student information page. One of the most important sections of student information is the enrollment status. Enrollment status must be accurately maintained throughout the year to ensure accurate reporting from the tool. If at any point a student's status changes from enrolled, it must be noted in the tool by selecting the appropriate category from the drop-down, whether the student transferred or dropped out of school. Users must also note the date of status change and the number of days for which the student was available. This is how the tool calculates, for example, attendance flags based on the number of available days the student was present in the school. Student information can be entered through importing data as a source file, which will be demonstrated momentarily. The second page in the data input section is the student incoming risk status page. The incoming risk status page can be populated in one of two ways. First, users can locally define an at-risk threshold in order to flag students. Additionally, users can import the final risk status indicator from a prior year's EWS middle grades tool. The next section is student exam performance. On this page, exam performance is entered to create a locally validated threshold to assign students as at risk based on exam performance. For example, my fourth student here, Catherine, performed poorly on her 7th grade math end of year exam. So we have assigned her as at risk due to that exam performance. The final section of data inputs is student performance, which houses all information relevant to the 4 indicators of risk that have already been discussed. In order to enter information into the student performance page, it must be imported through a source file, which I will now show you. A source file is simply a Microsoft Excel file saved as either a comma or tab separated file. For example, you see here, this is my quarter 4 source file. It has the student's ID number, as well as their total absences, English and math course failures, and number of behavior incidences. In order to import this information into the tool, it must be saved in one of the tool file types I've mentioned. For example, comma delimited here, or tab delimited here. Simply select one of these 2 file types, select Save, select Yes, multiple times. Now that this is a comma-separated value sheet, it can be uploaded into the tool. In order to upload this information into the tool, select the Import Data button on the top right. Browse to the location of the source file. You see here Student Performance Grading Period 4. Select Open to choose the file pathway. Select a grading period from the drop-down. This is quarter 4, so it will be imported into the quarter 4 section of the student performance page. You'll notice that until this grading period is selected, the import button remains grayed out to prevent users from accidentally importing the information into the incorrect grading period. You also have to select the file format. For example, this sheet was comma delimited, so we'll leave that marked as comma delimited, and select Import. Select OK. And the information from the quarter 4 source file has populated quarter 4 performance data within the tool. The next section is the Outputs and Reports section. The Student Risk Status page displays each student and their indicators of risk for each of the grading periods in use. The Student Risk Status page can be filtered in a number of ways by demographic categories, for example, ELL students or disadvantaged students, the cohorts that were entered on the tool settings page, for example, teams 1 through 4, and the time frame or the grading periods that are in use, as well as the year totals, which wraps up all of the indicators from the prior grading period. This information can also be exported to populate the incoming risk status page of a subsequent tool by selecting Exit Indicator Export from the left-hand side, selecting the appropriate location and format, and pressing Export Data. This now creates a new source file that can be used next year to populate the earlier pages of the tool. Students can also be assigned interventions from the Student Risk Status page. For example, Catherine, who you'll remember, and I'll come back to several times throughout the presentation to illustrate how the tool addresses an individual student. Catherine has been flagged for multiple issues, both incoming and exam performance, as well as first 20 days attendance, math courses failed, and behavior in the first grading period. To assign Catherine to an intervention, simply right-click on her name and select Assign to Intervention from the bottom of the menu. This pulls up a more detailed page regarding all of Catherine's risk indicator flags throughout the year, as well as any intervention that she's been assigned to. You see, Catherine is already in attendance monitoring from the beginning of the school year. She's also been flagged for math course failures, so we may want to assign Catherine to academic tutoring. In order to do so, simply select Assign Intervention to Student to create a new intervention line under Current Interventions. Select Academic Tutoring from the drop-down and enter the start and end date. So if Catherine was flagged in quarter 1, perhaps her intervention started at the beginning of quarter 2 and continued until the end of the year. Students can also be assigned to intervention by selecting the Assign Intervention to Student button from the main menu. The final section of the Outputs and Reports section is the Reports Control Panel. The Reports Control Panel houses 4 different types of reports. The first are school-level reports. School-level reports show student data in the aggregate and are an excellent resource to share with school board or other community members where identifiable student information should not be shared. The first school-level report that will be demonstrated today is the Student Risk Indicator Summary Report. To create this report, simply select it from the drop-down, select the cohort to be used, and hit Create Report. This creates a graphical representation of the risk indicator flags for all students during the appropriate time period, which can be any of the grading periods currently in use. You see that, for example, for quarter 1, first 20-day attendance, 7 students have been flagged as crossing the 20% threshold, represented here by the dark blue bar. Additionally, 40 students have not been flagged as crossing that threshold, represented in the lighter blue. These reports, as I mentioned, can be changed between any grading period currently in use. This is the same report for quarter 2. The next school-level report I'll demonstrate is the Risk Indicator Summary Report for students with disabilities. This report summarizes the risk flags for all students who have been designated as having a disability from the student information page. For example, the 3 students identified as autistic have not been flagged for any of the 4 risk indicators in quarter 1. However, 3 of the 4 students identified as having an emotional disturbance have been flagged for one of those indicators. Again, this report and all school-level reports can be filtered by the grading period. The next section of reports are student-level reports. Student-level reports contain identifiable student information and are therefore most useful for the early warning system team or other school administrators. The first student-level report that will be demonstrated today is the Flagged Student Report. The Flagged Student Report shows a list of all students that have been flagged as at risk for any of the indicators in use for the current grading period. Again, this report can be sorted by any of the grading periods in use. So for example, you see Catherine again on this screen has been flagged for incoming indicator as well as the 3 other indicators of risk on this page. The next report is the Incoming Indicator of Risk Report, which is simply a list of all students who are identified on the Incoming Indicator of Risk page as at risk based on a prior year's information. Again, not to pick on Catherine, but you'll notice her here since we did identify her as at risk. The third student level report is the Overage Student Report. The Overage Student Report is unique to the middle grades tool and relies on the kindergarten cutoff date that was entered on the tool settings page. You see here that 2 students, Greta and David, have been identified as more than 2 years overage for their grade. You'll also notice that both of these students have been shaded in a darker gray. In this report and throughout the tool, this indicates that a student has dropped out, and if we scroll further, we'll see that Greta dropped out at the end of quarter 2, and we have no information from that point on, and David dropped out in the end of quarter 3. This report also shows any interventions to which students have been assigned for the various grading periods. Additionally, custom reports can be created from the Custom Report Wizard. Simply select Custom Report from the student level reports and press Create Report to open the wizard. any of the fields for which information has been entered prior in the tool will be shown on the left-hand side as available. Again, I mentioned that we strongly recommend that users fill in all fields on the tool to unlock more reporting features. This is one of those features where if users did not enter the information, it will not be available to create a custom report. In order to select a field from the custom report, simply highlight it on the left-hand side, use the right arrow to move it into the report field on the right. These will become sections of the report that will be created. The third type of report is the detailed student report, which reveals more detailed information about an individual student. For example, to bring up Catherine's report here, we see the demographic information that was entered on the student information page, as well as the flags for the risk indicators from the risk indicator summary page. And finally, any interventions that Catherine has been assigned to. You'll see academic tutoring, for which Catherine was assigned during this demonstration, has appeared as a second intervention, along with the type tier from the intervention settings page and the start and end date of the intervention. This report corresponds with Section 4 of the EWIM 7-step implementation process, which is to interpret the EWS data to assist students. The final report from the Reports Control Panel is the Student Level Intervention Summary Report. This report shows all students and their indicators of risk, as well as any interventions to which they have been assigned. This concludes the middle grade tool demonstration.
Great, thank you, Matt. Before we transition to hearing a little bit about the high school version of the tool, there's one question from a participant. And the participant asked that you previewed only a few of the reports that were able to be seen on the drop-down menus. Will all of the other reports that can be seen on those menus be available to users?
Yes, for the sake of time, only a handful of reports were previewed from both the school and student level reports. Any reports seen on the drop-down are available to users, provided that users have entered the information required to create the report in the first two sections of the tool.
Great, thank you. I'm now going to turn it over to Michelle Perry, and Michelle is going to highlight some of the major differences between the middle grades and the high school version of the early warning system tools. We're excited to have some of these enhancements that we're now releasing on our high school version of our tool. And as a reminder, both tools, along with the implementation guide and high school technical manual, are available on our website, www.betterhighschools.org. Michelle?
Thank you, Mindy. As Mindy mentioned, I am now going to provide an abbreviated demonstration of the Early Warning System High School tool, specifically highlighting some of the significant changes from the middle grades tool. In addition, I'll show some of the reports that high schools have found especially useful. Just like the middle grades tool, you'll download the high school tool from the website. Once that's done and opened, you'll have to also enable macros, enable the content, click OK, and you'll be able to enter into the main menu of the tool. As you'll notice, the setup is similar to the middle grades tool with a different color scheme, separated into the same three sections: tool setup, data inputs, and outputs and reports. One key difference in the high school tool is within the tool settings page. On the right side of the page, the thresholds reflect those indicators of risk that Mindy highlighted earlier in the presentation. For example, the high school tool, the first 20-day absence rate default threshold is 10%, whereas in the middle grades tool, it's set at 20%, as research supports a lower threshold at the high school level. On the left side of the page is where the user will enter thresholds to reflect those used at the school or district, such as the GPA scale and the number of credits to graduate. Within the data inputs menu, we're going to look at student incoming risk status. As with the middle grades tool, the student incoming risk status page is where you can record incoming risk status information for each student either manually or by importing a source file from a previous year's tool. As you'll recall, Matt demonstrated how to export end-of-year data. That information is what will now be used to
Michelle, we need
populate.
to stop and restart. For whatever reason, purple was a race and ethnicity category.
It gets our
Once the tool is open, you'll notice that the setup is similar to the middle grades tool with a slightly different color scheme.
Wait, stop.
Thanks, Mindy. I'm now going to provide an abbreviated demonstration of the Early Warning System High School tool, highlighting the significant changes from the middle grades tool. In addition, I'll show some of the reports that high schools have found especially useful. Just like the middle grades tool, you'll have to download the high school tool from the website, betterhighschools.org. Once you've done that and opened the tool, you can go to the main menu and start inputting data. Once the tool is open, you'll notice the setup is similar to the middle grades tool with a slightly different color scheme. It's also organized into the three sections: tool setup, data inputs, and outputs and reports. One key difference is within the tool settings page. On the right side of the page, you'll notice the thresholds reflect those indicators of risk Mindy highlighted at the beginning of the presentation. For example, the first 20-day absent rate threshold is set at 10%, whereas in the 20% in the middle grade. For example, in the high school tool, the first 20-day absence rate default is 10%, whereas it is 20% in the middle grades tool, as research supports a lower threshold at the high school level. On the left side of the page is where the user will enter thresholds to reflect those used at the school or district, namely the GPA and the number of credits to graduate. Within the Data Inputs menu, we're going to look at the Student Incoming Risk Status. As with the middle grades tool, the Student Incoming Risk Status page is where you can record incoming risk status information for each student. You can do this either manually or by importing a source file from a previous year's tool. If you'll recall, Matt demonstrated how to export end-of-the-year data. That information will now be used to populate this page, and I'll demonstrate how to do that. Select the Import Data button, browse to where you've saved the exit indicator file, and select the file and open. Then select Import on the menu, and OK. This populates the tool with the data from the previous year's tool. Moving on to student risk status. This page includes another feature particular to the high school tool. In this page, the student risk status page includes another feature particular to the high school tool, namely the inclusion of the CCSR Consortium on Chicago School Research Indicator of Risk. I'm going to select all time frames, and you can see scrolling to the end is the column for the CCSR indicator. This indicator is calculated by taking into account performance in the core courses and accumulated credits for the year to predict if a student is on track for graduation. Using the same student Matt used earlier, Catherine, from the middle grades tool, we can see that she has been flagged as having an incoming indicator of risk, in this case from the middle grades data we just imported. We can see now that she has improved her academic and attendance record in high school and is not being flagged as at risk in the CCSR indicator. Moving on to the reports control panel, I will now demonstrate a couple of the reports that high schools have found useful. The undercredited student report is unique to the high school tool. Within the student level reports, select undercredited student report from the drop-down menu and create report. This report shows a list of students who did not obtain sufficient credits for promotion at the end of the school year. You may remember that the tool setting page required the user to insert the number of credits needed to graduate. And this is where that information is used. Back to the reports control panel. A couple of the other reports that high schools have found useful in determining student risk status are the on-to-off track report and the off-to-on track report. Also included in the middle grades tool, these reports highlight those students who were on track the previous grading period and then became off track the next, or vice versa. I'm going to show you the on to off track report, selecting it again from the student level reports drop-down menu. Create report. This report provides a nice snapshot of those students who in this instance may have begun the school year with no indicator of risk, but after the first grading period appear to be struggling. EWS teams can use this to explore reasons as to a student's change in risk status. The off to on track report is very similar. I'm going to select quarter 3 to bring up our student highlighted in the middle grades tool again, Catherine. This report shows students who were flagged as being off track at the beginning of the school year and are now on track for graduation. The final two reports within the reports control panel, detailed student report and student level intervention summary report, are very similar to the middle grades tool. So this concludes the highlight of the high school tool. For a more in-depth look at the National High School Center Early Warning System High School tool, please refer to the High School Center website, betterhighschools.org, for a full technical manual, an implementation guide, and additional archived webinars featuring the tool.
Great, thank you, Michelle. That was a very nice summary of the key differences between the middle grades and high school tools. I'm now going to turn it over to Laura Urhat, who's going to give us a tour of the National High School Center's EWS Community of Practice.
Great. Thanks so much, Mindy. The National High School Center is very pleased to announce the launch of the Early Warning System Community of Practice. And in fact, it is launching officially today, December 7th, and the National High School Center is very excited to invite all of you who are listening and participating in this webinar to join the community and become members. The Early Warning Systems Community of Practice is an online community for EWS practitioners and other interested parties, and this will provide an interactive space for EWS practitioners and users to participate in discussions surrounding EWS technology and implementation, blogs, documents and resources, polls to see how others use the EWS technology or implementation, and also stay up to date on events related to early warning systems. Most exciting for those of us here at the National High School Center and for other members is the fact that community members will have the opportunity to obtain support directly from the National High School Center staff regarding any questions related to the technology or implementation, along with learning from others who have received similar support and gaining guidance from others who are also using this in the field, along with sharing strategies. So I am now going to demonstrate how you can get into the community of practice and give you a brief tour of what we have there for our members. So in order to access, you will need to go back to the National High School Center's website, betterhighschools.org, and again, select the Early Warning System from the left navigation tab. Once you're at the main page here in Overview, all you will need to do is scroll down, and as you will see, we have the new Early Warning System Community of Practice. If you click on that hyperlink, an additional browser will open, which will take you to the home page of the Community of Practice. If this is your first time to the website and to joining, you'll need to fill out this information here in this Join and Learn More blue pane. However, if you've already joined, you can go up here to the Already a Member Login category hyperlink and select, where the next screen will bring up your username and password. Once you're in there, you will go to Groups and select EWS. This will then take you to the launch site for the Early Warning System community. As you can see, the National High School Center is pre-populating this community of practice with a variety of information that we hope our users will find helpful. For example, we have blogs, a place for EWS discussions, documents, polls, and events. For example, when I commented briefly, just a moment ago regarding the pre-populated data, within documents, the National High School Center has created a space for frequently asked questions. These are the questions that are most Matt, sorry, the web browser just froze. I apologize.
That's fine. Stop. There you go. I'll just cut out the delay.
For example, within documents, the National High School Center has pre-populated a frequently asked questions section. These are the questions that the National High School Center Early Warning System team gets asked very frequently from users of the technology and implementation. For ease of use, we have divided these into 3 different categories: getting started, tool setup, and data import and export. So for example, if you have a question on how to obtain the EWS Middle Grades tool or the EWS High School tool, you would go under Getting Started, How do I obtain the EWS tool? And you would click that hyperlink. Additionally, if you have questions regarding source files or importation of source files, you could scroll down here to the Data Import and Export section and click on How do I import source files into the EWS Middle Grades tool? Additionally, the National High School Center has also created an event space
to provide a space so there's one location for all members to stay up to date on EWS-related activities. And as I mentioned at the beginning, today is the official launch of the Community of Practice, and we really invite all members of the webinar today to join and participate in the National High School Center's Early Warning System Community of Practice. Once you join, the National High School Center asks that you view and update your profile, comment on a document, or start a discussion, and then provide feedback on those activities within the EWS discussion. So in order to join the Community of Practice, what you'll need to do is, again, go to either the National High School Center's website, betterhighschools.org, and click within Overview, or you can go directly to community.betterhighschools.org. Complete the Join and Learn More form that I highlighted on that main page. Once you complete that form, you will receive an email that will contain your password from nhsccommunity@air.org. I would highly recommend that you add that email address to your address book before you join in order to mitigate any potential problems with spam filters and that email with your password getting caught up in that. Once you have received that password, log back in, and then click on the Early Warning System group and then click Join. Should you have any questions or comments about the Early Warning Community of Practice, please feel free to email the Early Warning System team at the National High School Center at ews@betterhighschools.org.
Great, thanks, Laura. We do have a few questions that have come in from participants. The first one is if I'm having problems creating a source file or importing a source file into either one of the early warning system tools, is there a help desk that I can contact for assistance?
Oh, definitely. I would definitely recommend first going to the Community of Practice. There's a lot of information there that the National High School Center has provided on source file creation and source file importing and exporting, along with being able to ask, specific questions that you may have that maybe some of the information there doesn't quite answer, which will also then provide the National High School Center staff the opportunity to then fine-tune and refine those questions that we currently have online for our users. In addition, the National High School Center staff is always available at the website, betterhighschools.org, along with via email at the email address I just gave for any questions at ews@betterhighschools.org. And in addition, we also have a toll-free phone number that our users and anybody who has questions are more than happy to call, and that number is 1-800-634-0503. And again, the National High School Center staff is more than happy to answer those questions, whether that's through the Community of Practice, via email, or via telephone.
Great, thanks, Laura. And that number and all of those resources are linked right off of our website. We have another question that's come in from one of our participants, and that question is in relationship to one of the demonstrations. And this participant noticed that all of the test scores that were provided in the exam performance were percentages. And they state that in their state, their scores are on a scale of between 2 and 600. Is it possible for the user to use those scores instead of the percentages that were given in the example?
I'll answer that, Mindy. Just as a reminder, the exam performance page was within the middle grades tool. And no, you don't need to enter that data in the form of percents. All information to the right of the indicator column are considered supplemental data that does not factor directly into calculating the risk status. Information used in these columns can be any number range. They can also be entered using text, for example, indicating whether a student is proficient or not proficient in a particular exam or assessment.
Great, thanks, Michelle. We have one more question, and this question from the participant reads, is it possible to export reports or student data back into Excel or a CSV file for further sorting or manipulation?
I can answer that question, Mindy. Information can be exported out of certain pages on both tools using the export button. For example, a student information page has an export button which will create a new CSV file containing all information housed on that page. In order to get information out of the reports, users can copy and paste the columns within, for example, the student level reports into a new worksheet in order to save that information in a different format.
Great. Well, this was a very informative presentation, and I definitely enjoyed hearing it today and learned a lot from my team. Thank you, guys. I want to remind everyone that there is an upcoming webinar again, Stories from the Field, Putting EWS into Practice, and it will be next week, same time, same place. Remind everyone that we have our online community of practice, and this is a great place to go if you have any questions about technical or implementation of an early warning system. We have all of our products and tools that we mentioned in today's webinar available at www.betterhighschools.org. And if you have additional questions, always feel free to email us at ews@betterhighschools.org. Thanks a lot, and I hope everyone has a wonderful day.